Okay.
I've learned a lot in 15 years of teaching writing. Honestly, coming into it, writing was not one of my strengths for teaching at all. I came in with a lot of knowledge on photography and design, and writing was something I really needed to work at to become better at. One of the big turning points for me was, oh man, it was probably like 10 years ago. I was sitting in a parent-teacher conference. It's something that I dread a lot of times. For instances just like this, but I was sitting in there, and this mother came up to me and she said, you know, my son took journalism class because he wanted to be a sports reporter and he was so excited about it, and then he took your class and now it's the last thing he wants to do. And for me, I was just like, you know, it just kills you. It totally killed me. And so I was like, you know, why is that? And she's like, you know, he turned his papers in to you, and he'd get them back, and they were just so marked up and so bloodied that, you know, he just got discouraged. And what that made me look at and realize then, like, you know, growing up and going through a lot of the teachers that I had, you know, I thought the way to help people be good writers was I should take what they did and show them all the things they would have changed or how I might have rewritten a paragraph and move things around. And what I realized was I was doing a lot of overmarking. And rather than helping kids and move them and make them better writers, what I was actually doing to a lot of them was discouraging them from getting any better. And so what I implemented at that time, and this is one of the two biggest things that's helped me, but what I started to implement since then, and I do like 4 essays, 4 stories throughout the course of a semester with students, and I try to, with each one of them, build as I go. And so the very first one that comes in, I keep things real simple on my expectations. I look for 3 specific things. I keep them pretty basic and entry level, and what a lot of that is it's to build confidence for them as writers. It's to make sure they get 1 or 2 skills, new things that I want them to learn as they go, and then what I do then is we go with that. Even if there's a lot of other things that are on there, I try not to mark them. I work to make sure that I'm marking some good things in the paper and not just things that they've done wrong, and I make sure to denote those with a check mark above them. And then with the second story, the second piece that they write that they come in, I make sure those first 3 things that we're still doing those, but we're adding a couple on top of those and we're layering it. And then the next story, we add 2 more skills on top of that, and the final story, we're adding some more on top of that. So by the end of the semester, we're doing all those things that I want them to leave the classroom with, but that I'm not expecting all of that maybe in the first 4 or 5 weeks of class with a bunch of students who are coming in here with a varying set of skills. And so I think from my standpoint, it's really helped, especially some of those students who maybe don't have the confidence in writing, and some of those low-level writers, giving them some confidence early on and helping them stay with me a lot longer than I had been earlier on in the process. The other thing that's really, really helped, I got turned on at some point to actually this book that's sitting right here, Coaching Writers by Roy Peter Clark and Don Fry. And I use it a lot with my upper level kids, my publication staff members and my copy team. And what it basically talks about in there, long story short, is there is a difference in the writing process between coaching writers and editing, and editing their work. Editing really, when we talk about that, really should be, and it's talked about in this book, it's really seen as going in and just fixing things, fixing commas, fixing tenses of the word there, working to make sure there's some parallel structure that might be off, getting things out of passive voice, maybe that was missed or something like that. What this really does is work with them in the early stages of the writing process to really ask writers a series of questions as they are working to gather info and in the early stages of writing. Really a lot of the same questions, like what's the most interesting thing about what you learned? Can you explain to me some of the things that you found out gathering the info? Where do you think you should go to find that information? And it's really a series of questions that what I do is I work to train a group of my editors and my leaders on in my classroom, so that working with conferencing, if I'm trying to get around to 30 students who are all writing stories in a class hour, it's impossible for me. It would take me a week or 2 to get through them all, but I get a core group of students who also have that same questioning technique in mind, and we kind of divide and conquer the room so that students are able to work through some of this coaching, so to speak, within a day or two, rather than spreading it out over 2 weeks, and it keeps the writing process moving. It makes class so things don't come to a halt and kids are just kind of sitting around waiting. Actually, if I was teaching in an English classroom, it would be something that I would probably take a day or two at the beginning, middle of the first quarter or something like that, and I would work with my entire class on how to coach. I think everybody in the room could be practiced and trained how to coach, which what that would allow them to do is when you are writing different papers, working on different projects and assignments, students could actually peer coach one another, and do a lot of, not peer editing, but peer coaching, talking about that writing, talking about what they find most interesting, talking about what the focus of their paper might be or what some of the main points are, and really work through some of those processes together. The really cool thing about this coaching aspect is that for the coaches, it actually makes them better writers in the process because they're working to coach others. And once you've been coached a few times, what's really interesting about it too is when you go to write something, the questions that you know somebody is going to ask you has already worked through your head, so that you're already coming up with those answers. You've already thought about those things. You've maybe already looked for and gathered that information, so you don't need to go back out and get it later. For me, that working with overmarking and getting this book and really working and prescribing a lot of it in my classroom have been the two biggest things that have helped alleviate a lot of pressure on me as a teacher, and really I think help my students become better writers a lot more quickly.